Most people think the perfect mountain town means Aspen or Vail. The reality? Those famous spots often bring extreme housing prices, constant tourist crowds, and winters that can wear you down. But across the Rockies, Blue Ridge, and Cascades are real mountain towns where people actually live year-round. So let's begin with an unexpected mountain community high in Arizona's landscape. Hidden mountain towns that most Americans ignore. Show Low, Arizona. Number 26 kicks things off with a mountain town that kind of scrambles people's expectations a little. Arizona usually makes people picture cactus, long desert highways, and that blazing heat that feels endless. But way up in the White Mountains, there's Show Low, Arizona, sitting more than 6,000 feet above sea level, and the whole vibe shifts up there. The air cools down, forests get thick with ponderosa pine, and honestly, the scenery looks nothing like the desert postcards people usually imagine when they hear Arizona. The town itself has a population a little over 12,000, which creates this interesting balance where it stays small enough to feel quiet and peaceful, but at the same time, big enough to support real year-round living. You've got everyday essentials like Summit Healthcare, Regional Medical Center, local shops lining Deuce of Clubs Avenue, and access to nature that basically starts right at the edge of town. Walk just a few minutes outside the center and suddenly you're surrounded by the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, this huge stretch of wilderness packed with hiking trails, mountain biking routes, and high country lakes that seem to appear everywhere once you start exploring. One of the local favorites is Fool Hollow Lake Recreation Area, and mornings there often begin with kayaks sliding quietly across calm water, while anglers chase trout before the sun even clears the tree line. Not far from there, the Show Low Bluff Trail opens up panoramic views across miles and miles of forest, and that's the moment where you start realizing Arizona's geography is way more diverse than most maps ever suggest. Housing in the area usually lands far below the prices you see in those famous Rocky Mountain ski towns, which is exactly why remote workers and retirees keep slowly discovering the place. Summers stay surprisingly mild because of the elevation, and winters bring light snowfall, just enough to add that mountain town atmosphere without shutting everything down for months at a time. Even the name has this strange little piece of Old West history tied to a legendary card game where one player supposedly challenged another to show low, and that moment ended up deciding the settlement's name. Odd origin story, sure, but the town ends up proving something about mountain living in America. Sometimes the most livable places are the ones nobody talks about. And if this Arizona forest town already feels like a surprise, the next spot on the list shifts the scenery completely toward a quiet Colorado community where open land, mountain views, and a very different kind of lifestyle are starting to pull people in. Elizabeth, Colorado. Coming in at number 25 is a Colorado town that kind of slips past the radar, even for people who swear they already know the Rockies inside and out. Elizabeth, Colorado sits roughly 40 miles southeast of Denver, resting at about 6,500 feet above sea level, right in that zone where the wide open plains slowly start rising toward the Front Range. The population is just over 3,000 residents, so the place keeps that tight, small community feel, but at the same time it's been growing because more and more people are looking for quieter living while still staying within reach of a major city. What's interesting is that the lifestyle here doesn't revolve around ski lifts or packed resort streets. Space is really the defining thing. Horse ranches stretch across the countryside, huge skies dominate the horizon, and when the weekend rolls around, people often head toward Castlewood Canyon State Park, where rugged cliffs, hiking trails, and rock climbing routes wind along the path carved out by Cherry Creek. Even with that rural atmosphere, everyday life still functions year-round. Local shops and cafes sit along Main Street. Families spend time at Running Creek Park, and when bigger services are needed, they're still easy to reach in nearby communities across the Denver metro area. That balance, yeah, that's the part that keeps drawing newcomers in. Housing usually lands lower than what you'd see in a lot of those famous mountain destinations, while the surrounding landscape still delivers the Colorado scenery people come here hoping for. Winters bring crisp air and the occasional snowfall. Summers stay comfortable thanks to the elevation, and the slower rhythm of daily life ends up attracting families, remote workers, and outdoor enthusiasts who just want a little breathing room outside the city. Elizabeth ends up proving that mountain living doesn't always mean some remote ski village tucked deep in the peaks. Sometimes the real appeal shows up in a quieter town where ranch land, canyon trails, and distant mountain peaks all sit in the same view. And if this Colorado community feels calm, well, the next location on the list shifts the scenery again, this time into a very different landscape where desert mountains hide another surprising place people are choosing to call home year-round. Barton, New Mexico. Next up is a mountain community that almost never shows up on travel lists, which is kind of surprising when you realize it sits in one of the most striking landscapes in the Southwest. Barton, New Mexico is a small census-designated place with a population under 2,000 residents, tucked into northern New Mexico, somewhere between the cultural center of Santa Fe and the rugged terrain of the state's high desert mountains. Life out here moves in a quieter, more spacious way, though interestingly, it doesn't feel completely cut off. People still remain within driving distance of Santa Fe's services, hospitals, galleries, and restaurants, so the connection to a larger city is there, but day-to-day life still unfolds with that slower rhythm you expect from a rural mountain community where wide skies and open land dominate almost every view. The landscape around Barton blends desert mesas with pine-covered ridges and rocky canyons, and that mix creates scenery that looks very different from the snowy alpine towns most people picture when they hear the phrase mountain living. Outdoor recreation ends up shaping a lot of daily life. Within reach are remarkable places like White Sands National Park, with its massive gypsum dunes, and the legendary caverns of Carlsbad Caverns National Park, both of which add to the sense that this whole region is a little unusual geographically. Closer to the community, trails leading into the Gila National Forest stretch for miles and miles, offering hiking, horseback riding, and off-road exploration through rugged backcountry terrain that still feels pretty wild. Areas like the Burro Mountain Homestead region pull in locals who want quiet trails and wide open wilderness without the crowds that come with bigger tourist destinations. Housing costs here also tend to land lower than what you see in many western mountain towns, which, unsurprisingly, has started catching the attention of remote workers and people searching for a slower lifestyle surrounded by nature. Barton quietly proves something about mountain living in America. It isn't always tied to ski resorts or classic alpine villages. Sometimes it unfolds in high desert landscapes where mountains, forests, and these huge open horizons all come together. And if this quiet New Mexico community already feels a bit remote, the next town on the list shifts the scenery once again, this time toward a Nevada location where desert mountains are hiding a growing place people are starting to move to year-round. Mesquite, Nevada. Next up is a place that kind of flips the usual idea of mountain living on its head because it shows pretty clearly that mountains don't always mean snow-covered peaks or ski resorts. Mesquite, Nevada, sits up in the northeastern corner of the state near the Arizona border, surrounded by rugged desert mountains that turn these deep shades of red and orange when the sun starts dropping in the evening. The town has a population of more than 24,000 residents, which actually makes it larger than a lot of small mountain towns, but it still keeps this relaxed pace that tends to draw people who want year-round living somewhere outside the rush of major cities. Mesquite rests along the Virgin River and sits about an hour north of Las Vegas, so residents stay within reach of big city services while still holding on to a quieter day-to-day lifestyle. And daily life here really does function year-round because the town has actual infrastructure in place. Mesa View Regional Hospital, local businesses running along Mesquite Boulevard, and community spaces like Hoffen Park, where people gather for sports, outdoor events, and just spending time outside. Recreation looks a little different here, though. Instead of ski slopes, the outdoor life leans toward desert adventure. Hiking trails weave through the nearby mountain ranges, scenic drives open up wide canyon views, and mountain bikers often push out into the rugged terrain just beyond town. One of the region's most recognizable landscapes sits within reach at Valley of Fire State Park, famous for its massive red sandstone formations and those winding desert trails that seem to twist through the rocks forever. Zion National Park is also within driving distance, adding towering cliffs and dramatic canyon scenery to the list of nearby places people head for when they want to get out into Musser. Mesquite's warm climate, its steadily growing community, and the easy access to outdoor landscapes have drawn retirees, remote workers, and people who just want a slower rhythm to daily life. Golf courses stretch across the valley floor, desert mountains frame the horizon in every direction, and sunsets spill across the sky in these huge bands of color. Mesquite quietly shows that mountain living in the United States can look completely different depending on the region you're standing in. And if this Nevada desert town already feels unique, the next place on the list shifts north into Wyoming, where rivers, canyon walls, and alpine scenery create an entirely different mountain experience. Alpine Wyoming. Number 22 moves the list deep into the Rocky Mountain West, the kind of place where rivers, forests, and those towering peaks come together in a landscape that almost feels untouched. Alpine Wyoming is a tall mountain town with a population just over 1,000 residents, sitting right where the Snake River meets the broad waters of Palisades Reservoir near the Wyoming-Idaho border. And honestly, the setting alone explains why people stumble across this place and then decide they don't really want to leave. The town rests at roughly 5,600 feet above sea level, surrounded by rugged mountains and this enormous stretch of wilderness that quietly shapes everyday life. Outdoor recreation here isn't just something people do on weekends. It's more like the local routine. Residents launch boats across Palisades Reservoir right at sunrise, paddle into quiet coves along the shoreline, or head down through the Snake River Canyon where rafting trips and fishing pull in anglers chasing trout through cold mountain water. Not far away, the Bridger-Teton National Forest spreads across huge terrain filled with hiking trails, wildlife, and deep pine forests where spotting elk or even moose isn't unusual. And even with that remote feeling, Alpine still stays connected to larger places. Jackson Hole sits within driving distance, which means residents can reach restaurants, ski resorts, and extra services when they need them, then turn around and return to a much quieter home base far away from the tourist crowds. In town, small cafes, harifas, outfitters, and local shops form the center of things, reflecting the independent mountain culture Wyoming tends to be known for. When winter arrives, the surrounding mountains turn into a snow-covered playground for snowmobiling and cross-country skiing, and then summer rolls back around bringing anglers, hikers, and boaters straight to the water again. Alpine ends up showing something pretty simple about mountain living in America. Sometimes it looks like a tiny town sitting quietly in the middle of enormous wilderness. And if this Wyoming valley already feels remote enough, the next location on the list shifts the scenery in a big way, moving toward the Blue Ridge Mountains, where a lively Appalachian city introduces a completely different kind of mountain lifestyle. Small mountain cities with real jobs. Roanoke, Virginia. Number 21 shifts things a bit, moving away from those quieter mountain towns and into a place where natural scenery blends with real economic activity. Roanoke, Virginia sits right in the Blue Ridge Mountains with a population close to 100,000 residents, which makes it one of the larger communities in the Appalachian region, though it still feels tied closely to the surrounding wilderness. The city stretches along the Roanoke River, and all around it these forested ridges rise up, turning deep green through the summer and then bursting into those fiery fall colors when autumn rolls in. What's interesting about Roanoke is that it isn't built mostly around tourism the way a lot of mountain destinations are. The economy here is more balanced, supported by healthcare, education, and technology. Major medical centers like Carillon Roanoke Memorial Hospital anchor the region and bring in jobs along with long-term stability. Downtown has been steadily growing too, with restaurants, breweries, music venues, and restored historic buildings creating an atmosphere that mixes old railroad history with modern city life. Outdoor recreation still weaves into daily routines. Just minutes from downtown, you'll find Mill Mountain Park, where wooded trails climb up toward the famous Roanoke Star, that giant illuminated landmark looking out over the entire valley. And then there's the Blue Ridge Parkway nearby, opening the door to scenic drives and miles of hiking across the Appalachian Highlands. Housing costs generally land lower than what people see in many western mountain towns, which helps pull in remote workers and families searching for mountain views without resort town prices. Roanoke ends up showing that mountain living can thrive inside a city that still has real jobs and everyday conveniences. And if this Appalachian mountain hub already feels lively, the next place on the list heads farther south to a community where a waterfall sits right in the middle of downtown. Greenville, South Carolina. Number 20 brings the list down to the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where a city somehow blends mountain scenery with a downtown that stays surprisingly lively. Greenville, South Carolina has a population of more than 70,000 residents and sits along the Reedy River right at the edge of the Appalachian foothills. What tends to catch people off guard is how well the place balances urban energy with natural beauty. The center of Greenville revolves around Main Street, a walkable stretch lined with restaurants, cafes, and local shops where tree-lined sidewalks stay busy with residents and visitors pretty much all week. The real focal point of the city sits just a short walk from there at Falls Park on the Reedy. That's where the Reedy River spills over a wide natural waterfall surrounded by gardens and trails, and right above it curves the Liberty Bridge, a pedestrian bridge arching over the rushing water that creates one of the most recognizable views anywhere in the region. Outdoor access keeps going beyond downtown as well. Cyclists and runners regularly follow the Swamp Rabbit Trail, a well-known greenway stretching for miles through parks and wooded areas, heading toward the small mountain town of Travelers Rest. Greenville also runs on a strong local economy supported by healthcare, manufacturing, and education, including major facilities like Prisma Health Greenville Memorial Hospital. Housing prices generally stay lower than what you'd find in many western mountain towns, which has drawn families and professionals looking for mountain access without paying resort town costs. Greenville ends up proving that mountain living can exist inside a vibrant city surrounded by foothills. And if this Appalachian hub already feels energetic, the next place on the list heads straight into the Smoky Mountains where tourism and wilderness collide. Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Number 19 takes the list straight into one of the most recognizable mountain gateways in the United States. Gatlinburg, Tennessee sits right at the entrance of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, the most visited national park in the country, and that location ends up shaping almost everything about life there. The town itself has a population of roughly 3,500 residents, though the surrounding region supports a much larger community because visitors keep flowing into the Smoky Mountains year after year. Downtown Gatlinburg stretches along the parkway, this lively corridor packed with restaurants, souvenir shops, and attractions like Ripley's Aquarium of the Smokies and the Gatlinburg Space Needle Observation Tower. And even with all that tourism energy moving through town, everyday life still circles back to the mountains. Within just a few minutes of leaving the main strip, roads start climbing into the forests of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, where scenic drives, waterfalls, and hiking trails reveal those layered blue ridges the region is famous for. Trails leading toward Alum Cave and the summit area near Klingman's Dome open up sweeping views across the Appalachian landscape, the kind that makes you pause for a second without really meaning to. Streams running down through the forests feed the Little Pigeon River, which flows right through town and quietly adds to the natural backdrop surrounding the community. Residents also stay close to everyday services over in nearby Sevierville, including medical facilities like LeConte Medical Center. Gatlinburg ends up offering a lifestyle where wilderness basically begins the moment you step outside the town limits. And if this Smoky Mountain Gateway already feels familiar, the next place on the list heads west toward Arizona, where a much larger mountain city shows a completely different version of year-round mountain living. Flagstaff, Arizona. Number 18 lands in a mountain city that completely flips the usual Arizona stereotype on its head. Flagstaff sits about 7,000 feet above sea level on the Colorado Plateau, surrounded by one of the largest ponderosa pine forests in North America, which, when you first picture Arizona, probably isn't the landscape that comes to mind. The city has a population approaching 80,000 residents, making it much larger than most places on this list, yet somehow it still holds on to a strong mountain town personality. Northern Arizona University sits right in the heart of town and plays a major role in the local economy, bringing in students, research activity, and the steady year-round energy that keeps the community moving. Downtown Flagstaff blends historic brick buildings with cafes, breweries, bookstores, and outdoor gear shops clustered around Heritage Square. And walking through that area, you can feel that mix of college town energy and mountain culture all happening at once. Even with those lively streets, nature begins almost immediately once you reach the edge of the city. Arizona Snow Bowl rises on the nearby San Francisco peaks and provides winter skiing along with these sweeping views stretching across northern Arizona. When the snow disappears, the same mountains turn into a network of hiking trails winding through cool alpine forests, which is exactly where residents often head when they want to escape the desert heat farther south. Flagstaff also sits within driving distance of some of the most famous landscapes anywhere in the American Southwest, including the Grand Canyon, Walnut Canyon National Monument, and Sunset Crater Volcano National Monument. Medical facilities like Flagstaff Medical Center help support year-round living, and the regional airport keeps the city connected to larger travel networks beyond the plateau. Mild summers, snowy winters, and easy access to forests and ancient volcanoes give Flagstaff this reputation as one of the most surprising mountain cities in the country. And if this high-elevation Arizona hub already feels impressive, the next town on the list shifts over to Colorado, where a historic mountain community built around railroads and outdoor adventure waits beyond the peaks. Durango, Colorado. Number 17 drops us into the rugged San Juan Mountains of southwestern Colorado, where one historic town blends Old West character with modern mountain living. Durango sits at about 6,500 feet above sea level along the Animas River and has a population just under 20,000 residents. Walk through the downtown area along Main Avenue, and you can still see the city's railroad and mining past in those preserved brick buildings, though now they're filled with cafes, restaurants, bookstores, and outdoor gear shops that keep the streets busy throughout the year. One of the most recognizable landmarks here is the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, a historic steam train that winds through steep mountain canyons following the course of the Animas River and remains one of the region's best-known attractions. Step outside town, and the landscape opens up fast. The San Juan National Forest spreads across the surrounding mountains, with hundreds of miles of hiking and mountain biking trails cutting through forests and high country terrain. When winter arrives, the focus shifts north toward Purgatory Resort, where skiing and snowboarding bring people up into the snow-covered slopes above the city. In warmer months, the pace slows down a bit, and residents often walk or cycle along the Animas River Trail, a scenic route tracing the river as it passes through parks and neighborhoods. Durango also supports year-round living with institutions like Fort Lewis College and regional medical care provided at Mercy Hospital. Historic streets, mountain scenery, and a strong outdoor culture all come together here, making Durango one of Colorado's most livable mountain towns. And before the list moves even deeper into the Rockies, there's a quick pause ahead because a few unusual mountain town facts are about to make things even more interesting. Mountain town reality check. All right, quick pause for a second. Visiting beautiful mountain towns is one thing, but actually living there year-round, that's a completely different story, because real communities need more than scenic views. They need jobs, hospitals, grocery stores, the everyday things that make life work when the tourists go home. And here's the interesting part. Some towns manage that balance surprisingly well. The next places on this list really prove it, and one of them sits not far from Glacier National Park. Mountain towns exploding with remote workers. Kalispell, Montana. Number 16 brings the list up into the northern Rocky Mountains, where one Montana town has quietly turned into a magnet for people looking for year-round mountain living. Kalispell sits right in the middle of the Flathead Valley with a population of roughly 25,000 residents, surrounded by these dramatic wilderness landscapes that really shape daily life across this part of the state. Just to the east, Glacier National Park rises with its jagged peaks, alpine lakes, and hundreds of miles of hiking trails stretching through the mountains. Head south and you reach Flathead Lake, one of the largest natural freshwater lakes in the western United States, where summers usually mean residents out boating, fishing, or kayaking under those wide Montana skies. What makes Kalispell interesting is how it balances that small town character with the kind of infrastructure people actually need for everyday living. The city has regional medical services at Logan Health Medical Center, and the historic downtown runs along Main Street with restaurants, local shops, and cafes that keep the area active through the year. Outdoor recreation basically shapes the culture here. Weekends often turn into drives along the famous Going to the Sun Road inside Glacier National Park, or trips out to nearby mountain trails that spread across the surrounding ranges. When winter arrives, the region shifts into a snowy playground, with skiing and snowboarding waiting over at Whitefish Mountain Resort, just a short drive away. The presence of Glacier Park International Airport also connects the area to larger cities, which makes travel easier for remote workers and families who have been relocating here. Kalispell ends up showing how a mountain town can grow while still holding on to a strong connection to the wilderness around it. And if this Montana Valley already feels impressive, the next place on the list shifts toward a lake town where clear blue water and forested hills have been pulling in new residents for years. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Number 15 brings the list to one of the most scenic lake and mountain communities in the northern Rockies. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho sits up in the state's panhandle near the Washington border and has a population approaching 60,000 residents. The whole city really centers around Lake Coeur d'Alene, this long, clear stretch of water running more than 25 miles through forested hills that quietly shape daily life around here. When the warmer months arrive, you'll usually see boats out on the lake, people paddleboarding, others fishing, and trails winding up through the surrounding mountains, pulling hikers into the forests. One of the most popular places sits right beside downtown at Tubbs Hill, a public nature area with wooded walking paths and granite viewpoints that look out across the lake. Downtown itself stays active throughout the year with restaurants, cafes, and local shops leading toward the well-known waterfront boardwalk near the Coeur d'Alene Resort. The growing community is supported by healthcare services like Kootenai Health, and not far away, the city of Spokane sits less than an hour down the road, which means more employment options, bigger shopping areas, and airport connections when people need them. Winter usually brings snow to the surrounding mountains where residents head for nearby ski areas. Then summer rolls in and the lake becomes the center of everything outdoors. Coeur d'Alene manages to blend mountain scenery with lakefront living in a way not many towns pull off. And if this Idaho lake town already sounds impressive, the next place on the list moves toward California, where alpine forests and snowy peaks surround a mountain town sitting near one of North America's most famous lakes, Whitefish, Montana. Number 14 brings the list to a mountain town that almost feels designed specifically for outdoor life. Whitefish, Montana, sits in the Flathead Valley with a population of around 8,000 residents, surrounded by forests, lakes, and towering peaks that shape the entire landscape of northern Montana. The town rests right beside Whitefish Lake, a clear mountain lake where locals spend the summer months boating, swimming, and paddleboarding while forested hills rise up along the shoreline. Downtown Whitefish keeps that classic mountain town atmosphere with brick buildings, art galleries, cafes, and local shops lining Central Avenue, and the place stays lively through every season of the year. Just outside town, you'll find Whitefish Mountain Resort, one of the largest ski areas in the northern Rockies, where winter turns the slopes into a hub for skiing and snowboarding overlooking the valley. When the snow disappears, those same mountains shift into hiking and biking terrain with wide alpine views stretching across the region. The town also sits within driving distance of Glacier National Park, where the well-known Going to the Sun Road winds through rugged peaks, waterfalls, and alpine lakes tucked into the mountains. Medical care for the region is supported by Logan Health Medical Center over in nearby Kalispell, and Glacier Park International Airport helps connect the valley with larger cities beyond Montana. Whitefish manages to blend mountain scenery, lake life, and a vibrant downtown in a way not many places manage to pull together. And if this Montana community already feels impressive, the next location on the list shifts toward California, where another mountain town sits close to the legendary blue waters of Lake Tahoe. Truckee, California. Number 13 takes the list into the Sierra Nevada, where one historic mountain town has gradually become a favorite for people looking for year-round mountain living. Truckee, California sits at about 6,000 feet in elevation, with a population near 16,000 residents, surrounded by alpine forests, granite peaks, and the kind of heavy winter snowfall that really shapes daily life in this part of the mountains. The town actually started as a railroad settlement during the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad, and you can still see traces of that past along Donner Pass Road, where those restored buildings now hold cafes, restaurants, bookstores, and outdoor gear shops. Truckee's location also puts it just minutes away from Lake Tahoe, one of the most famous alpine lakes anywhere in North America, known for its deep blue water and dramatic mountain scenery that seems to stretch in every direction. Outdoor life basically drives the culture here through every season. Winter arrives and the focus shifts towards skiing and snowboarding at nearby resorts like North Star California Resort and Palisades Tahoe, and then when the snow melts, the same region opens up with hiking trails, mountain biking routes, and kayaking around the lake and surrounding forests. Donner Memorial State Park sits just outside town as well, combining scenic lake views with a museum that preserves the history of the Donner Party. At the same time, Truckee still supports full-time residents with services like Tahoe Forest Hospital and direct access to Interstate 80, which connects the town with Reno and Sacramento. That balance between wilderness and real infrastructure has gradually attracted remote workers along with families searching for mountain living that still keeps them connected to nearby cities. And if this Sierra Nevada town already sounds impressive, the next place on the list heads back toward the Rockies, where a famous ski town blends historic streets with alpine peaks rising in every direction. Breckenridge, Colorado. Number 12, it lands high in the Rockies, where one of Colorado's most recognizable mountain towns keeps thriving well beyond the ski season. Breckenridge sits at nearly 9,600 feet in Summit County and has a population of just over 5,000 residents. The town originally grew out of a gold rush settlement back in the 19th century, and that history still shows along Main Street, where colorful Victorian buildings now hold cafes, restaurants, galleries, and outdoor shops. Rising directly above the town is Breckenridge Ski Resort, one of the largest ski areas in the United States with more than 3,000 acres of terrain spread across 5 peaks. When winter settles in, the whole area turns into a snowy playground for skiers and snowboarders, and then summer arrives, and those same slopes open up with hiking and mountain biking trails across the 10-mile range. The Blue River runs right through the center of town, where walking paths and fishing spots add another layer of mountain scenery to everyday life. Even with its international reputation as a ski destination, Breckenridge still supports full-time residents with regional services across Summit County, including nearby St. Anthony Summit Hospital in Frisco. Interstate 70 also runs through the region, connecting the town to Denver so people can reach a major city while still living deep in the mountains. Historic streets, alpine scenery, and recreation that lasts all year have made Breckenridge one of the most iconic mountain towns in the country. And if this Colorado ski town already feels legendary, the next place on the list shifts toward Utah, where another mountain community blends world-class slopes with a surprisingly strong year-round lifestyle. Mountain lifestyle towns. Big Fork, Montana. Number 11 lands in a mountain town where lake life and quiet alpine scenery quietly shape what everyday living looks like. Big Fork, Montana sits along the northeastern shore of Flathead Lake with a population just under 5,000 residents, and the town also rests right near the mouth of the Swan River where it flows into the lake, creating this landscape of clear water, forested hills, and distant mountain ridges that seem to frame everything. Flathead Lake itself happens to be one of the largest natural freshwater lakes in the western United States, which means the warmer months usually revolve around boating, fishing, and kayaking across that wide stretch of water. Downtown Big Fork has that classic mountain village feel with art galleries, cafes, restaurants, and small shops gathered along Electric Avenue not far from the waterfront. The town has also developed a reputation for its creative side through the Big Fork Summer Playhouse, a live theater venue that brings visitors from across Montana each season. Step outside town, and outdoor recreation spreads in every direction. Trails in the nearby Flathead National Forest wind toward alpine lakes and forested peaks, while the Swan Mountain Range rises beyond the community and creates a dramatic backdrop across the horizon. Even though Big Fork itself stays fairly small, it connects easily with nearby Kalispell, where regional health care is available at Logan Health Medical Center, and larger services support the valley. The result is a mountain town where lake scenery, arts culture, and outdoor adventure all blend into daily life in a pretty natural way. And if this peaceful Montana lakeside community already feels inviting, the next destination on the list shifts east toward the Blue Ridge Mountains, where a creative mountain city has quietly become one of the most vibrant places to live in Appalachia. Woodstock, New York. Number 10 moves the list into the Catskill Mountains, where a small town became known for creativity, music culture, and that quiet mountain scenery people keep searching for. Woodstock, New York, sits in Ulster County with a population a little over 6,000 residents, resting right at the foothills of the Catskills. Now, the famous Woodstock Music Festival actually took place miles away in Bethel, but somehow the town's name became permanently linked with that whole artistic movement, and that creative energy still shapes the community today. The center of town runs along Tinker Street, where bookstores, art galleries, cafes, and small shops line the sidewalks beneath tall trees, and it's pretty common to see musicians playing near the village green, while local artists show their work in studios scattered through the downtown area. Step a little farther out, and the landscape shifts quickly into forest and mountains. One of the best-known hikes nearby climbs Overlook Mountain, where a steep trail passes the stone ruins of the old Overlook Mountain House before opening up sweeping views across the Catskill Mountains and the Hudson Valley. Forest trails, streams, and quiet woodland paths start just minutes from those downtown streets, which is part of what gives the place its character. Woodstock also stays connected to nearby towns across the Hudson Valley, where larger services and medical facilities support the region. In the end, it creates a mountain community where art, music, and nature blend together in everyday life without feeling forced. And if this creative Catskills town already feels unique, the next stop on the list heads south into the Blue Ridge Mountains, where a mountain city has quietly built a reputation for food, breweries, and a surprisingly energetic art scene. Asheville, North Carolina. Number 9 brings the list to a mountain city where creativity, food culture, and those sweeping Blue Ridge landscapes all come together in one of the most dynamic communities in Appalachia. Asheville, North Carolina sits right in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains with a population close to 100,000 residents. The city runs alongside the famous Blue Ridge Parkway, that scenic mountain drive known for its wide overlooks and forested ridgelines stretching across western North Carolina. Downtown Asheville mixes historic architecture with a really energetic art scene where galleries, music venues, bookstores, and cafes line streets that stay busy pretty much year-round. Just beyond the center of town, you'll find the River Arts District along the French Broad River, where old industrial buildings have been turned into working studios for painters, sculptors, and craft artists. One of the most recognizable landmarks in the region is the Biltmore Estate, a massive historic mansion surrounded by gardens and forested grounds that draw visitors from across the country. Asheville has also picked up national attention for its restaurant scene and its collection of craft breweries, giving the city a reputation as a culinary destination tucked into the mountains. Medical services for the region are supported by Mission Hospital, and Asheville Regional Airport helps connect the city with larger travel networks. At the same time, outdoor adventure sits only minutes away from downtown, with hiking trails, waterfalls, and mountain overlooks scattered across the surrounding Blue Ridge. And if this Appalachian mountain city already feels lively, the next place on the list heads west again toward Utah, where a famous ski destination has gradually turned into a thriving year-round mountain community. Legendary mountain destinations. Sun Valley, Idaho. Number 8 brings the list to one of the most legendary mountain communities in the American West. Sun Valley, Idaho sits out in the Wood River Valley surrounded by rugged peaks and those wide alpine landscapes that seem to stretch forever. Nearby, the town of Ketchum becomes the center of daily life where restaurants, galleries, and outdoor shops line walkable streets that stay busy through every season. Rising high above the valley is Bald Mountain, famous for its long ski runs that pull in skiers and snowboarders from around the country when winter settles in. Just across the valley sits Dollar Mountain, known more for its beginner-friendly slopes and that relaxed family atmosphere. Once the snow melts, the entire region shifts again, turning into this huge network of trails threading through the Sawtooth National Forest, where hikers, cyclists, and even horseback riders head out into the high alpine terrain. The Big Wood River runs straight through the valley and has become widely known for fly fishing, drawing anglers looking for clear mountain water and quiet stretches of river. Sun Valley also carries a strong cultural side through places like the Sun Valley Museum of Art and the historic connection to author Ernest Hemingway, who spent time in the area and is buried over in nearby Ketchum. Medical care for the valley is supported by St. Luke's Wood River Medical Center, and regional services help keep the community running year-round. And if this classic Idaho mountain destination already feels iconic, the next place on the list heads toward the Sierra Nevada, where another famous mountain community rises between one of the most stunning alpine lakes in North America, Leavenworth, Washington. Number 7 lands in a mountain town that somehow feels surprisingly European, even though it sits deep in the Cascade Mountains of Washington. Leavenworth rests along the Wenatchee River with a population just over 3,000 residents, yet its unusual alpine theme has made it one of the most recognizable mountain communities in the country. Decades ago, the town went through a major reinvention after the logging industry declined, and the solution was pretty unexpected. Downtown buildings were redesigned with Bavarian-style architecture that now shapes the entire village. Walk along Front Street and you'll see wooden balconies, colorful facades, bakeries, and restaurants that make the place feel more like a small alpine village in Germany than somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Step beyond the buildings and the landscape opens up quickly. The Wenatchee River runs through town providing rafting, kayaking, and fishing, while trails climbing into the Cascade Mountains lead hikers through forests and up toward sweeping alpine views. Winter shifts the region into a snowy playground with skiing and cross-country trails nearby, and the town keeps its lively feel through the colder months. Leavenworth Adventure Park adds another attraction with its alpine coaster dropping down the hillside above town and offering wide views across the valley as it twists downhill. Wildlife experiences like the Leavenworth Reindeer Farm add an unexpected northern mountain atmosphere to the area as well. Altogether, it creates a place where storybook architecture somehow blends with real mountain living. And if this Bavarian-style village already feels unique, the next destination on the list heads into Utah, where a famous ski town has quietly evolved into one of the most iconic mountain communities in America. Big Sky, Montana. Number 6 moves the list deep into the Rocky Mountains, where one destination honestly lives up to its name. Big Sky, Montana, sits out in the wide valleys of southwestern Montana, surrounded by dramatic peaks and open landscapes that stretch for miles in every direction. The community itself stays relatively small, but the area has become one of the most recognized outdoor destinations in the United States. Rising high above town is Lone Peak, the massive mountain that anchors Big Sky Resort, one of the largest ski areas in North America, with thousands of acres of terrain for skiing and snowboarding when winter rolls in. Once the snow disappears, those same mountains open into a huge network of trails where hikers and mountain bikers head out exploring the surrounding wilderness. Down in the valley, the Gallatin River flows through the landscape and is widely known for fly fishing and rafting, especially along its scenic canyon stretches. Big Sky also sits within driving distance of Yellowstone National Park, which means residents can reach geysers, wildlife, and those dramatic geothermal landscapes without traveling far. Back in town, places like Big Sky Town Center bring restaurants, shops, and community events together throughout the year, giving the area a shared gathering point. For medical care and larger regional services, people often head to nearby Bozeman, where facilities like Bozeman Health Deaconess Hospital support the region. The mix of huge scenery, constant outdoor adventure, and close proximity to Yellowstone is exactly what has made Big Sky one of the most iconic mountain destinations in the West. And if this Montana landscape already feels epic, the next town on the list heads south into Utah, where another famous ski community blends luxury resorts with a thriving year-round mountain lifestyle. Vail, Colorado. Number 5 brings the list to one of the most famous ski towns anywhere in the Rocky Mountains. Vail, Colorado sits high in Eagle County along Interstate 70 and has a population of only a few thousand residents, though its reputation stretches way beyond the valley itself. The whole town was built around Vail Mountain, one of the largest ski resorts in North America, with thousands of acres of terrain spreading across the slopes. When winter settles in, skiers and snowboarders head out to explore legendary areas like the Back Bowls and Blue Sky Basin, those wide alpine expanses that have become almost symbolic of Colorado skiing. Down at the base of the mountain sits Vail Village, a pedestrian-friendly district designed with alpine architecture that feels a lot like a European mountain town. Cobblestone streets connect cafes, boutiques, and restaurants tucked beneath wooden balconies with the mountains rising behind them. Just a little farther along the valley, Lion's Head Village forms another lively center where gondolas lift straight toward the slopes above. Once the snow disappears, the landscape shifts again and the mountains open into summer terrain filled with hiking trails and mountain biking routes stretching across the Gore Range. The Eagle River flows through the valley as well, bringing fishing and rafting opportunities when the warmer months arrive. Healthcare across the region is supported by Vail Health Hospital, and Interstate 70 keeps the town connected with Denver along with other mountain communities. And even though Vail already carries that legendary reputation, the next place on the list heads toward another iconic mountain town known for Olympic history and sweeping alpine scenery, the most livable mountain towns. Park City, Utah. Number 4 brings us to a mountain town that somehow manages to be both a world-class resort and a real place where people actually live full-time. Park City, Utah, sits in the Wasatch Mountains about 30 miles east of Salt Lake City and has a population of roughly 8,000 residents. That number tends to surprise people because the town's reputation is enormous. It originally began as a silver mining town back in the late 19th century, and pieces of that past still line historic Main Street, where restored brick buildings now hold restaurants, art galleries, and cafes tucked beneath steep mountain slopes. Rising above the town is Park City Mountain Resort, one of the largest ski areas in North America, with thousands of acres of terrain stretching across the surrounding mountains. Not far away, Deer Valley Resort adds another massive winter playground known for its perfectly groomed runs and upscale mountain services. Winter transforms the peaks into a landscape of ski trails winding through snow-covered forests. Then, when the snow finally melts, the mountains change again into hiking routes, mountain biking trails, and scenic overlooks scattered across the Wasatch Range. The town also became internationally known through the Sundance Film Festival, which brings filmmakers and artists into local theaters and onto the streets each year. Even with all that global attention, Park City still works as a year-round community with medical care available at Park City Hospital and quick access to Salt Lake City International Airport for travel and job connections. That balance between outdoor recreation, cultural events, and everyday livability is exactly why Park City keeps showing up on lists of the most desirable mountain towns in the country. And if this Utah mountain city already feels close to perfect, the next destination climbs even deeper into the Rockies, where massive landscapes and endless wilderness start defining life in the next town on the list. Truckee versus Whitefish. Number 3 actually creates a rare tie on this list because two mountain towns keep coming up in nearly every conversation about year-round mountain living. One sits in California's Sierra Nevada, right beside Lake Tahoe, and the other rests deep in northern Montana, not far from Glacier National Park. Truckee and Whitefish both offer dramatic mountain scenery, 4 true seasons and real communities instead of seasonal resort bubbles that empty out after winter. Truckee, California has a population of roughly 16,000 and sits along Interstate 80 just northwest of Lake Tahoe. The town grew during the railroad era, and that history still shows in its historic downtown, where cafes, gear shops, and local restaurants line Donner Pass Road with that rugged alpine character still intact. Only minutes away you'll find Donner Lake and Donner Memorial State Park, where hiking trails circle alpine water beneath towering Sierra peaks. Winters here revolve around skiing at nearby resorts like North Star California Resort and Palisades Tahoe, and once summer arrives, the region shifts into mountain biking, paddleboarding, and fishing across the surrounding forests. The town also benefits from being close to Reno and Sacramento, which gives residents access to larger job markets while still living in a mountain setting. Whitefish, Montana offers a different but equally compelling lifestyle. The town sits beside Whitefish Lake with around 8,000 residents and a lively downtown filled with breweries, galleries, and cafes along Central Avenue. Just outside town rises Whitefish Mountain Resort, a massive ski area overlooking the forests of northwest Montana. Glacier National Park sits only a short drive away, placing hundreds of miles of hiking trails, alpine lakes, and wildlife-filled valleys within easy reach. Medical services are available at Logan Health Whitefish, and Glacier Park International Airport helps keep the town connected to major cities. Truckee blends mountain living with California access, while Whitefish offers quieter wilderness and close proximity to a national park. Both towns consistently rank among the most livable mountain communities in America. Bozeman, Montana, number 2 on the list, lands in a mountain city that keeps coming up whenever people start talking about the most livable places in the American West. Bozeman, Montana sits in the Gallatin Valley surrounded by the Rocky Mountains and has a population approaching 60,000 residents. That number alone makes it different from many smaller resort towns because Bozeman feels like an actual city with year-round activity, steady jobs, and solid community infrastructure rather than a place that only wakes up during ski season. A big part of that comes about from Montana State University, a major research university that anchors the local economy and brings students, researchers, and cultural events into the city throughout the year. Downtown Bozeman stretches along Main Street where historic brick buildings now hold restaurants, coffee shops, bookstores, and outdoor outfitters. Public spaces like the Bozeman Public Library and nearby Lindley Park help shape the city's community atmosphere, while mountain views remain visible in almost every direction you look. Healthcare for the region is supported by Bozeman Health Deaconess Hospital, providing medical services across much of southwestern Montana. What really sets Bozeman apart, though, is the outdoor access surrounding it. Bridger Bowl Ski Area sits just outside town and offers some of the most respected skiing anywhere in the Rocky Mountains. Farther south, you'll find Big Sky Resort, with its massive alpine terrain pulling in skiers from across the country. The Gallatin River flows through the valley and is widely known for world-class fly fishing and rafting opportunities. Yellowstone National Park lies roughly 90 minutes away, which means one of the most famous wilderness areas on the planet is practically in the backyard. That rare mix of a strong economy, constant outdoor recreation, and everyday livability has pushed Bozeman near the top of almost every mountain town ranking. And still, one destination claims the number one spot on this list, and the reason it does might surprise you. The ultimate mountain town. The number one spot goes to a mountain city that keeps appearing in national conversations about the best places to live in the United States, not just among mountain communities. Asheville in North Carolina sits right in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, with a population approaching 100,000 residents. And here's the thing, unlike a lot of Western resort towns that lean heavily on seasonal tourism, Asheville actually functions as a full-scale mountain city where culture, healthcare, jobs, and year-round outdoor access all exist side by side. The landscape around the city plays a huge role in that. The Blue Ridge Parkway runs straight through the region, linking scenic overlooks and hiking trails across the Appalachian Highlands. Just outside town sits Pisgah National Forest, where waterfalls, mountain ridges, and hundreds of miles of trails pull in hikers, mountain bikers, and people who just want to spend time out in nature throughout the year. The French Broad River flows directly through Asheville itself, adding kayaking, rafting, and riverside parks into everyday city life. Downtown Asheville has also built a national reputation for creativity and food culture. Historic streets around Pack Square and the River Arts District hold galleries, music venues, local cafes, and a dense collection of craft breweries that have helped turn the city into one of the most recognizable beer destinations in the country. Not far away stands one of the region's most iconic landmarks, the Biltmore Estate, the massive historic mansion built by George Vanderbilt that now draws visitors from across the world. Healthcare across the region is anchored by Mission Hospital, a major medical center serving western North Carolina. Asheville Regional Airport sits just outside the city as well, connecting residents with major hubs across the country. What makes Asheville stand out is the combination of mountain scenery, cultural energy, a mild climate, and real infrastructure that supports everyday life. It feels adventurous without feeling isolated. That balance is exactly why it rises to number one on this list of the best mountain towns in the United States to live year-round. Though there's one surprising detail about mountain living that can change how people see every town mentioned here. Because mountain living sounds perfect at first, until winter arrives, housing prices spike, or the nearest hospital turns out to be hours away, the best towns find a balance between scenery and real life. Ski in the morning, groceries by noon. Find that balance.